This is CGTN, China Global Television Network. Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Jamie Owen. Welcome to the programme. Our top stories. The only power station in Gaza has run out of fuel as officials warn of a humanitarian catastrophe in the besieged Palestinian enclave. The Israeli government vows to launch a ground offensive in Gaza amid ongoing rocket fire from Hamas. Our other headlines: air power will end the Ukraine war. President Zelensky's plea to NATO as ministers promise unwavering support despite those events in the Middle East. And how Wellington and Beijing are strengthening ties through the arts as China prepares to hold its third Belt and Road Forum. Officials in Gaza say the besieged enclave is facing an imminent humanitarian catastrophe as the only power station has now stopped working. Israel has imposed a total blockade on the Gaza Strip, preventing food, fuel and water from crossing the border. Well, people in Gaza are seeking shelter in schools and hospitals as Israeli strikes continue. Air raid sirens have been heard in Israel as rockets are fired by Hamas 5 days after the Palestinian armed group launched its unprecedented attack. Well, let's talk to our correspondent, Noor Harazin in Gaza. Noor, what's the situation there now, given the power blackout?
Well, previously we were talking about how the Gaza Strip turned into a ghost city with rarely anyone going out from their homes because of the continuous Israeli strikes on the Gaza Strip. Today it intensified even more with the Israeli warplanes also hitting the Gaza Strip with phosphorus bombs and with the blackout of electricity. This means that the Gaza Strip could disconnect from the world in the upcoming hours or maybe days, because basically cutting the electricity and the electricity company basically is running out of fuel, and cutting electricity from Gaza means that the total infrastructure will be destroyed. People will not be able to have neither electricity or water in their homes, and also there will be no internet or connections. So yes, this is a true catastrophe for the people of Gaza. At the same time, the Israeli warplanes intensify its airstrikes on Gaza. One of the latest airstrikes happened just 500 meters away from where I'm standing, when the Israeli warplanes targeted apartments in Al Carmel building, which is so close to Al-Shifa Hospital, which is Gaza's biggest and medical complex. Injuries and people killed were reported in this airstrike. According to the Palestinian Health Ministry, the death toll in Gaza is more than 1,100, and people injured is more than 5,200.
And I know you've been speaking to people who've been affected by missile and drone strikes. How on earth are they coping?
Well, we're talking about thousands of people who had to flee their homes, especially those that are located in areas like close to the border fence between Gaza and Israel, eastern Gaza, northern Gaza, and also we're talking about people who had to flee their homes in central Gaza City that were airstriked by Israel. Let's hear from them.
We left our homes thinking that we would return in an hour. We left our belongings, money, food, and everything we owned. Now there are 50 people in the house without supplies. I do not know how we will provide food for our children. I'm searching here under the rubble for the remains of lentils and rice.
We are civilians who have no connection to political organisations and do not belong to anyone. We returned here to find that our house had become rubble and the entire area had been destroyed. We have now become homeless and have nothing but the clothes we wear.
In the first days of this operation, people were able to go out from their homes and head to the bakeries and markets to buy the food supplies. However, now as we are entering the fifth day, people are really scared. They're just looking themselves inside their homes. So basically, they have to cope with whatever is inside their homes and their kitchens.
Noor, thank you for that. Our correspondent Noor Harazin in Gaza. Well, let's talk now to our correspondent Stephanie Fried in Tel Aviv. Stephanie, Prime Minister Netanyahu and opposition leader Benny Gantz have agreed to form a unity government. Breaking news. What's the significance of that?
Well, what it amounts to essentially is an emergency government. And the opposition has been pushing for this for days. And the significance of where I am right now plays into that. I'll come back to that. And that's because right now, the government that's in place, essentially, I'm getting reports from inside, from Jerusalem, from the government, that they've been incapable, because of the character and the characters who are ministers in the government, in this extreme right-wing government, incapable of handling this situation. Now, the head of that opposition, Benny Gantz, he's a former chief of staff, as well as another war cabinet now, this national unity government, emergency government. There's another former chief of staff there. These are people who are more capable. They're capable of assessing the situation, of taking action. How does this come into play? Because this is a massive drive for donations, distribution, collection for civilians who have been driven from their homes, who have fled their homes, who have been evacuated from their homes, both in the south and north, and for soldiers, 300,000 reservists who have been called up. This is a civilian-run initiative. This is not the government running this. And people have been highly critical, especially when you've got one government minister, extremist, right-wing settler, who toured a Gaza border town today and talked about distributing weapons to civilians, warning publicly that if that didn't happen, if he wasn't he was distributing those weapons because the danger of Arab citizens of Israel rising up was present and imminent, basically fueling fire of another front that could erupt because of what this specific minister, Ben Gvir, was driving. So this is a relief to a lot of Israelis, an emergency cabinet, a war cabinet, the two sides coming together, especially with experienced military people serving in that cabinet.
Well, that's the politics. Let's talk about what's going on the ground. Israel has attacked Lebanese territory. This is in response to attacks from Hezbollah.
Right, and it's Hezbollah and attacks that are coming from Syria. This has been a back and forth that's been going on for 4 days. And just to give you a sort of a sense of what's been going on back and forth from the north, you've had anti-tank missiles fired on army posts. Then you've had drone strikes on Hezbollah posts from the Israeli side as well. 15 rockets fired from Lebanon, missiles fired, mortars fired from Syria. So this is a back and forth that's been ongoing for days. And the concern here is that a new front will open up in the north. Now, a source that I was in touch with earlier today, who's based in the north, said, not so. Not necessarily, because to open up a new front, in his opinion, Hezbollah doesn't want to do that. However, we're seeing this activity. We're seeing people killed in these clashes and these confrontations. Israel has mobilized troops and hardware, military hardware to the north. People have been evacuated, civilians from the north. So there's really, at this point, no way of knowing what could develop further there.
Stephanie, thank you for that. Our correspondent Stephanie Fried in Tel Aviv. Well, those events in the Middle East are casting a long shadow over a meeting of NATO defense chiefs. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has made what he calls a critical trip to Brussels, hoping to keep his country's war with Russia in the news headlines. Zelensky wants more NATO support through the winter to enable Ukraine to push back Moscow's troops. Ministers have been reiterating that recent events will not deflect their attention. Let's talk to our correspondent Alex Cadier, watching events for us in Brussels. Alex, President Zelensky clearly and understandably trying to keep the international focus on Ukraine.
Yeah, Jamie, you're absolutely right. Now, he was asked that question directly. Are you worried that the events in the Middle East may distract Allied support for Ukraine? He said, I'll be honest with you, of course we're afraid. If there's another tragic war in the world, it may divide support. He said that he asked NATO partners if their support would continue or would diminish. They said it would not diminish, and he said, but who knows? So clearly a concern by the Ukrainian president, who came here to clearly make a statement reiterating NATO support. Now, it seems as though those NATO allies have responded. We heard just a few moments ago the Estonian defense minister was just around the corner here saying it is our duty to maintain support for Ukraine. That was also echoed by the Spanish defense minister. We've seen the UK pledging £100 million worth of military equipment, $200 million being pledged by the United States, including air-to-air missiles, including 155mm artillery ammunition, as well as ammunition for those long-range artillery HIMARS. So clearly, it's not just words, there are deeds being put into this. Now let's listen to President Zelensky himself laying out exactly what his country needs.
Air defense is a significant part of the answer to the question of when this war will end, and whether it will end justly for Ukraine. And I'm confident that it can be so, it will be so. Everyone can see what the protection of the sky gives.
Alex, the violence between Israel and Hamas is obviously going to be discussed there. What are the options, do you think, for NATO, if any?
Well, at the moment, there isn't much of a collective response from NATO. They haven't yet gotten to the discussions about the violence in the Middle East. We know that the Israeli defense minister will brief the NATO defense ministers at their meeting here tomorrow. That will most likely lead to some announcement or some movement from NATO on that particular conflict. What is true is that individual countries are, of course, expressing their solidarity, their support, and also condemning the terrorist attacks by Hamas. So certainly, at the moment, NATO is mulling, is meeting, is trying to figure out what their position will be, but certainly hearing from the situation on the ground from Israel's defense minister. The other big entity in Brussels, of course, is the European Union. That has been a bit more of a messy response, to say the least. That conversation around whether or not development funding from the EU to Palestine would be cut has been clarified, and that it isn't being cut because there are no payments expected in the near future. But certainly that is the kind of action that you can expect to see from the EU. We'll have to wait a little bit longer to see NATO's collective response.
Alex, thank you. Our correspondent Alex Cadier in Brussels. Well, the European Union's Foreign Affairs Chief, Josep Borrell, arrives in China on Thursday for a two-day visit. Stabilising and improving relations between Brussels and Beijing will be top of the agenda of his visit.
China is willing to work with the EU on our comprehensive strategic partnership, strengthening strategic communication and policy coordination, and enhancing mutual trust. China is also willing to work with the bloc to expand cooperation and overcome differences to bring more benefit to both peoples and the world.
You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, supplies are running short in Gaza. We'll speak to the United Nations World Food Programme about what happens next.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
I think it should be more global cooperation.
I would like to hear more the voice of the developing countries.
Globalization has lifted more than 1 billion people out of poverty.
The green transition has to happen. It's a necessity.
Well, China and the United States are important powers in the world.
What unites us is much more than what divides us.
And I believe China is committed to this agenda.
Join me, Juliet Mann, to set the agenda at these times every weekend on CGTN.
Events have consequences. Words create impact.
One more offensive in a long line of battles that's been ongoing for more.
Just got to be careful here with some gunshots. Excuse us.
The world today matters for your world tomorrow.
The number of casualties is growing quickly.
Why? This is one of the hardest hit towns in the region.
The world today, every day on CGTN.
Hello, welcome back. A reminder of our top stories. The Israeli government vows to launch a ground offensive in Gaza amid ongoing rocket fire from Hamas. The only power station in Gaza has now run out of fuel as officials warn of a humanitarian catastrophe in the besieged Palestinian enclave. And you may find some of the images in Paul Hawkins' report upsetting.
Mourning, surviving, escaping, but with borders closed, it's unclear where they're going. The Palestinian Health Ministry says Israeli airstrikes have killed over 1,000 people and left more than 5,000 injured. 60% of them, it says, are women and children. With no more than 2,500 beds in Gaza, the hospitals are overwhelmed.
Houses were destroyed. Everything is gone. No one can enter their homes. This is just for Israel to be happy, and we are here surrounded by rubble. No food, nowhere to live, and everyone is attacking us. And we can't even eat or feed our children, and they destroyed our homes. We can't live like this. Where should we go? Children are now playing with these. Where should they sleep? These are our mattresses, pillows. What is that? Where are we living? This is not a life. We are living surrounded by rubble. Gaza is destroyed. Everything is destroyed.
But Israel insists its fire is aimed at Hamas targets.
What I want to tell you is that no, that isn't a civilian building. It is a legitimate military target. And why is that? Because Hamas locates all of their offices, headquarters, their research and development, and all of their other military assets, if it's above ground, they locate themselves in civilian buildings.
We don't know if Hamas were located in the business belonging to this man's son, but the airstrikes have had a profound effect on him.
The perfume shop that's located there belongs to my son. We opened it a month ago and it cost him $10,000. We want to tell the enemy, if we did not like the resistance before, then today we love it. If we loved it before, then today we adore it. Where a resistance member puts his leg, we will put our heads.
I want to be totally clear. The IDF remains committed to the law of armed conflict, and we conduct ourselves according to it. Despite the fact that we are furious, angry, frustrated, and appalled by the atrocities that Hamas has done against us, we still keep our morals and we still make sure that we fight according to the laws that we are committed to. And that's how we will continue, despite the difficult situation.
Israel says hundreds of thousands of troops are waiting to invade. to do what so many Israeli prime ministers have avoided since 2005, invading and maybe occupying one of the most densely populated places on earth. And Hamas says it will be ready for them. Another war, possibly the bloodiest so far in the never-ending cycle of violence here. Paul Hawkins, CGTN.
Well, let's speak to Aber Etfa from the United Nations World Food Programme. Welcome to the programme. What are you hearing? What are your people telling you? What's the current situation, as you understand it, in Gaza?
Well, the situation is very dire in Gaza. The humanitarian situation, I think, is deteriorating by the moment. We definitely plead for an immediate end to the hostilities that have inflicted immense human suffering in Gaza, in the West Bank, and in Israel. Definitely, the food security situation is deteriorating very fast, and Gaza is running out of food. The food stocks are running very low. The conflict has disrupted food production, distribution networks in Gaza, and with the borders closed, we don't have any way to replenish either the commercial supplies of food inside Gaza or our own stocks of food commodities in our warehouses in Gaza.
So realistically, what are you going to try and do? What is your ambition here? You're going to be frustrated by the fact that you can't get any supplies in, can you?
Well, the World Food Programme has already launched an emergency operation to provide the vital food assistance to over 800,000 people in Gaza and the West Bank, who, of course, lack access to food, water, and basic humanitarian supplies. We've already started the distribution of fresh bread, canned food, and ready-to-eat meals to around 137,000 people together with UNRWA. These people are already in refuge in the schools that UNRWA has opened up as shelters. But the reality is that the food stocks that we have in country are only enough for 44,000 people. So if we don't replenish these food stocks, our operations will come to a halt. We will not be able to provide the assistance to the 800,000 people. So two things we need is the ability to access these areas inside Gaza, to be able to replenish our stocks, and the funding that would allow us to quickly procure more food that we can use in the next few days.
Well, the rest of the world is looking on in horror at this conflict. What do you want the world to do to help you?
I think it's the important thing is I think all we need to advocate for, the ability of all humanitarian aid workers to move freely and safely, to give the civilian populations in every spot, the ability to breathe and to pause a little bit in the middle of this intense fighting. And of course, if you can donate to the World Food Programme, we need $17 million in the next 4 weeks.
Aber Etfa from the United Nations World Food Programme, thank you very much.
Thank you.
China says it'll host the third Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation in Beijing next week. President Xi Jinping will deliver a keynote speech at the opening ceremony on Tuesday and host a banquet for attendees. It's the 10th anniversary of the Belt and Road Initiative, the framework which connects countries around the world through land and maritime routes. Well, the Belt and Road Initiative isn't just about trade. It also brings about cultural exchanges between participating countries. A group of New Zealand's indigenous Maori have been making headlines for their performances in famous places, including China's Great Wall. Our correspondent Owen Poland reports.
The ocean dominates New Zealand's rugged east coast, and it also provides inspiration for the country's top kapa haka group. The Te Whānau a Apanui group takes its name from its own tribe, which has a rich history that includes hunting whales in the early 19th century.
We live on the ocean, we live off the ocean, and off of the land of our rivers, so all of our waiata, all of our haka retain from that, they mention that, they interact with that, and they should display that.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Belonging to the group involves regular and rigorous training sessions, from deep breathing to more advanced techniques that create New Zealand's distinctive haka.
It's a lot of hard work, a lot of commitment from everyone, and and it's fun.
The performers in the Kapa Haka group live in different parts of New Zealand, but their spiritual home is here, in this traditional Maori marae or meeting place, which is located in an isolated East Coast community with a population of only 400 people. The tribe has 13,000 members scattered across the country, and there's fierce competition to join a group that's won the National Kapa Haka Championships 3 times and become world famous after its recent performance on China's Great Wall. Temoto has been with the group for more than 25 years, since she was a teenager, and says that family ties are their greatest strength.
That is one of the most important things for our kapa hakas, the next generation coming through, and sometimes they're lucky enough to perform with their parents.
And Tamati says it's a great honour to be invited back to China for the Belton Road Beauty of Shared Arts production.
Things like this can only occur when one culture interacts with another culture, and we learn from each other and we share each other's ideas and our approach to education, our approach to business, and our approach to life.
And viewers can expect more Kapa Haka magic when the group takes the stage in Beijing. Owen Poland, CGTN, Tikaha.
The headlines again. The only power station in Gaza has run out of fuel as officials warn of a humanitarian catastrophe in the besieged Palestinian enclave. The Israeli government vows to launch a ground offensive in Gaza amid ongoing rocket fire from Hamas. Our other headlines: air power will end the Ukraine war. President Zelensky's plea to NATO as ministers promise unwavering support despite those events in the Middle East. And that is The World Today. Thank you for watching. We're back with more news at the top of this hour. Coming up next, it's World Insight. For now, from all of the team in London, it's goodbye.
Hello and welcome to the weather forecast. I'm Tierney. Well, over to Europe, and there could see numerous amounts of precipitation setting the stage here for the majority of the northern portion of Europe on Thursday, and most of them will be in the form of some light to moderate intensity of rain, and for several locations further up in the north we'll even run into some wintry mix or even the snowflakes. And here by Friday, no big change of the wet weather forecast, and here for the majority of the southern portion of Europe we'll continue to see some clear to cloudy conditions. And speaking of the high temperatures, the majority of Europe will see rather seasonable high temperatures over the next few days. Most of the high temperatures across the central portion of Europe will be running in the 20s. But notice that here for many locations, particularly for the western as well as the southern portion of the Iberia Peninsula, we'll still see the high temperatures running in the 30s, which is a little bit higher than the normal level at this time of year. So please be well prepared. And about business and travel for the major cities up in the north, and chance of showers for both Copenhagen as well as Stockholm on Friday, and a high of 13 degrees Celsius is in the forecast here for the city of Minsk. For other major cities across the western portion of Europe, Paris will be rather hot with high temperatures touching the 28 degrees Celsius mark on Friday, and Madrid will see chance of showers in the afternoon hours. And notice that the overnight low temperature will be just in the single digits, so please put on an extra layer during the morning and evening hours to stay warm.